am filming another video, even though it is hot as Satan's jockstrap out here. Everybody talks about the South, that it is not the heat, it's the humidity. It's a little of both, but the heat situation is actually better than it's been the past couple of days. The humidity situation is way, way worse. So it's like if you went into a bathroom and somebody locked the door and then turned on a really hot shower when it was already kind of uncomfortably warm. That is the size of things. So it is kind of miserable for the past 2 days because of the humidity. But I finished a Bigfoot nonfiction called Where Bigfoot Walks by Robert Michael Pyle. He's actually a professor of entomology, I believe, but he specifically works with butterflies. And he sort of got interested in Bigfoot. He is not what I would call one of the major Bigfoot hunters that go out there looking for proof of different things. This book is written more like an ecology book. He talks about the wild spaces and different things that are in the Washington, Northern California area that he is kind of hiking around, traveling and different things, and he sort of makes a big deal of talking about those and conservation. It's very interesting because he does it kind of like a travelogue, but there's also a feature of talking about whether Bigfoot is plausible in places like this, and then also talking about the Bigfoot hunters and different things he's come across, and the bureaucracy part of conservation, and the fact that the Forest Service is a great deal more about allowing lumber companies to do something than it is really about preserving forest area. It's just, and he compares it to people who are entomologists get into that sort of thing, but then they find most of their time is spent working for pesticide companies that like different ways to kill bugs. And that's true because like we know an entomologist, and he even recently did an experiment near our place about termites and different things. So that's true. And he tries to be very even in the fact that conservation is one thing, but then you also have people who are dependent on the timber and dependent on the lumber industry, and no matter what the timber industry does, they are not going to necessarily be sustainable in a way that it's just a very complicated situation. He doesn't make light of that. This is not someone who comes rolling in and says that we should stop doing timber and all sorts of different things. He very much is saying that, yeah, I understand, I don't like the different stuff that happens, but I do understand there's a demand for it, and this is people's livelihood, and there's a lot of different layers to everything that is happening. So that is a very nice thing. Now, the one thing, he is a little wordy. He takes a long time to say what I feel like he could have said in maybe half of it. I understand he's trying to lay out a good case for everything, but he does spend a while just kind of talking about his travels through the Dark Divide. And that's fine, it is interesting, but you have to, if you're looking for a book that is about Bigfoot evidence and whatever else, that is not really what he's writing. He's writing more a case for, if there is a Bigfoot, what do we do conservation-wise? If there is a Bigfoot, maybe these lumber companies have found evidence, but they're covering it up, because imagine what a nightmare bureaucracy-wise that would be if you found an animal like this on land that they want to timber. It's a whole, because he talks about the snowy owl and how some of these timber companies were told to shoot owls on sight because you didn't want that on your timber area, because then your timber area would be considered a place for an endangered animal. It's just a whole complicated nightmare. And he does then, there's one really interesting chapter or actually two, where he starts talking to all these different Bigfoot specialists and how all these Bigfoot experts and different things, when they will get together, it's so catty and they're so petty and they're so like sniping at each other the whole time. This is not a get together where they all want to get along and find the truth in different things. These are people who are all trying to beat each other to a discovery in a lot of circumstances, and they can't even decide on what to do. A lot of them would want to actually kill a Bigfoot if they found it. Some of them are like, well, no, we would prefer not to do that because it might be the only specimen that we can get our hands. But it's a whole, that's even very complex. So the whole thing is more about the fact that Bigfoot has now kind of turned into, and even more so from the when this was written. This was written, I think, in 99. So that's 20 some odd years ago. Things have even changed a great deal in the Smokies, and in recently with pandemic stuff going on, Bigfoot kind of became, and he talks about it in here, he was like, well, maybe someday Bigfoot will become the sort of symbol of wild areas in place of Smokey the Bear. He's like, this is more of a modern equivalent of what we would think of as a spokesman for conservation, different things. He has become that. That's the funny thing. Sasquatch and Bigfoot and all sorts of stuff, that has become one of the main spokesmen for conservation stuff. From when I originally started 20 some odd years ago, going to the Smoky Mountains regularly and living there part of the year and being there, you originally saw bear stuff a lot. It has now, a lot of it has switched over to Bigfoot stuff, and you see lots of Sasquatch stuff, and that has kind of become even big signs of him in different places that has kind of become the symbol of the great outdoors now, which is kind of odd. It switched over from an actual animal to a cryptid, but that is what a lot of parks have done. Last year I was at southern Illinois. It wasn't just one particular area, but Shawnee National Forest down there, and it was part of the time. It wasn't the whole time I was there. But Shawnee National Forest has sort of adopted Bigfoot as their spokesperson too. That's where I got this shirt. And they have a giant Sasquatch there that you can take pictures with, and they make a big deal about. And that sort of, we have moved into adopting Bigfoot as kind of this spokesman for the great outdoors in a different way than we adopt bears and animals and different things. And it's very interesting that Pyle kind of talks about that as, maybe that'll something that'll happen. He very much foresees that. He predicts that unintentionally. He predicts that. And this is an interesting book. Like I said, it took me longer to read than I had expected just because it is so dense. He's very wordy with big words. Not that they're big words like it's a textbook. He just has a big vocabulary. I made fun of Nothing But Black and Teeth because she used the word turgid in it. He does too, only his makes sense why he's using the word turgid in a sentence, because that's just how he talks. He's a professor. But it is very interesting. But if you were looking for like, ooh, Bigfoot and Bigfoot sightings and here's this and that and the other, that's not what this is. This is a conservation book with an idea that, okay, cryptids might be a thing, but that's going to present a whole new legal set of situations, and it's going to be a big deal there. So it's very even-handed in how it's talking about stuff, but it's talking about stuff much more academically. It's not like a romping adventure where you're going to be seeing, ooh, I saw a Bigfoot and here's my grainy footage from this or that. He talks about those different things. He talks about it all seriously. He is not discounting people who've seen Bigfoot. He's not discounting Bigfoot at all. He's just talking about it also in a conservation aspect. As a conservationist would talk about, okay, if this thing is real, there's going to be a lot of different elements involved in all of this. So I'm going to move on. I have several nonfiction books that are about conspiracy theories and misinformation stuff, so I'm moving on to them. I like to read a nonfiction about a topic, but then read several books about that topic, trying to kind of get a broad understanding of it, because everybody tends to come from things in different ways. So the next subject I'm going to be moving on to is kind of conspiracy theories, and see what some of these books have to say, why people believe certain things, and what certain terminologies and things are out there. So moving on from Bigfoot and cryptids that I've been reading about for a little bit to something a little bit different, but very good book, very ecological book in a way that I was not expecting it to be.